The morning everything changed started like any other at Harrison Technologies. I sat in my tiny office, reviewing contracts and organizing meetings. The endless administrative tasks they'd relegated me to after my promotion to office manager 6 months ago. My name is Sophia Harrison, and at 28, I was doing the work of 3 people while watching my younger brother Marcus coast through his role as VP of Operations based solely on his last name and gender. A knock on my door interrupted my focus. "Come in," I called, not looking up from the spreadsheet I was analyzing. "Working hard as always, sis." Marcus's voice dripped with condescension. I finally looked up to see him lounging in my doorway, designer suit perfectly pressed, not a care in the world. "Someone has to," I replied evenly. "Did you need something?" He tossed a stack of papers onto my desk. "Dad wants these reports reorganized before the board meeting. And make sure there's coffee and pastries, the good ones, from that place downtown." I stared at the pile of work that should have been his responsibility. "You mean the quarterly performance reports that were due last week? The ones you were supposed to prepare?" He shrugged, already turning to leave. "That's what we have you for, right? The details person." "The details person," I repeated softly. "Is that what we're calling it now?" But he was already gone, probably heading to another long lunch with his fraternity brothers while I cleaned up his messes, just like always. I picked up the reports, my jaw clenching as I saw the state they were in. Disorganized, incomplete, riddled with errors. Typical Marcus work. And somehow, I was the one who wasn't executive material. As I began sorting through the chaos, my phone buzzed with a text from David Chen, my old mentor from business school. "Meeting still on for tonight?" I smiled, typing back a quick confirmation. If my family knew about my weekly meetings with David, they'd probably assume I was dating him. Because surely that would be the only reason a woman would regularly meet with one of the most successful venture capitalists in the city. They had no idea that for the past year, I'd been quietly building something of my own. Something that would make Harrison Technologies look like a small-time operation. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and administrative tasks. I watched from the sidelines as my father and brother made decision after decision that made me cringe. Outdated technology choices, missed market opportunities, casual dismissal of innovative ideas from our younger employees. Harrison Technologies had been a pioneer in software development 20 years ago when my father founded it. But under his increasingly outdated leadership, and with Marcus as his chosen successor, we were falling behind, relying on old contracts and my father's golf club connections to stay afloat. I tried to point this out 6 months ago, presenting a detailed analysis of our market position and a comprehensive plan for modernization. That was when they promoted me to office manager. "This is more suitable for your skills," my father had said, his tone patronizing. "Leave the big picture thinking to those who understand business." I'd gotten my MBA from Wharton. Marcus had barely graduated with a bachelor's in communications from a state school. At 7 p.m., I finally left the office, but I wasn't heading home. Instead, I drove to a small coffee shop in a quiet part of town where David was already waiting. "How's our secret weapon doing?" he asked as I slid into the booth across from him. I pulled out my laptop, unable to contain my excitement. "The prototype is ready. Team's been testing it all week. It's everything we hoped for and more." David's eyes lit up as I showed him the demo. For the past year, I'd been developing revolutionary project management software that could transform how companies handled remote work and team collaboration. While Harrison Technologies focused on outdated solutions, I'd assembled a team of brilliant developers who shared my vision for the future. "This is incredible, Sophia," David said, studying the interface. "The AI integration, the intuitive design, this could change everything." "That's the plan," I replied, pulling up another document. "I've already got 5 major companies interested in beta testing. They're just waiting for the green light." David looked at me over his coffee cup. "You know, most people would have given up after being demoted like that. Moved to another company, started over." I shook my head. That's what they expected me to do. Give up, accept my place. Maybe marry some nice executive and settle for being a corporate wife. Instead, you use their underestimation to your advantage. "Being invisible has its perks," I said with a slight smile. "No one pays attention to the office manager working late. They assume I'm just being thorough with the filing." They never noticed me using my admin access to analyze company data, identifying all the gaps in the market that Harrison Technologies was missing. Never questioned my networking events that were actually meetings with potential investors and clients. The series of funding is secured, David said, sliding a folder across the table. Everything's in place whenever you're ready to make your move. I opened the folder, studying the numbers that represented months of careful planning. $5 million in initial funding, with the promise of more to come, a valuation that would make my father's eyes pop. One more month, I said, closing the folder. I need to get everything in position first. David nodded, understanding exactly what I meant. We planned as carefully, timing it for maximum impact. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Where are those reports? Board meetings tomorrow morning. I sighed, putting my phone away without responding. Let him sweat a little. How's he doing as VP? David asked, having heard plenty about my brother over the past year. Worse than expected, actually. Last week he lost a major client because he forgot to follow up on their renewal contract. Dad covered for him, of course. Blamed it on the sales team. David shook his head. Your father's setting him up for failure now. The market's changing too fast for old-school nepotism. He was right. The software industry was evolving rapidly, with new players disrupting traditional models every day. Harrison Technologies was already struggling to keep up. Under Marcus's leadership, they'll be looking for a buyout within 2 years, I predicted, assuming they last that long. We spent the next hour going over final details for the launch. My new company, Phoenix Software Solutions, was almost ready to spread its wings. The name was a private joke, one my family wouldn't understand until it was too late. When I finally got home that night, I had an email from my father. Board meeting moved to 8 a.m. Make sure everything's ready. No, please. No acknowledgement that I'd be working late to fix Marcus's mistakes. Just another command from on high. I stayed up until 2 a.m., correcting errors in the reports, making them presentable. Not because I cared about making Marcus look good, but because I needed to maintain my image as the perfect, dependable daughter for just a little longer. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 7 a.m., setting up the conference room exactly as expected. Coffee, pastries, water bottles at each seat. Reports printed and bound, slides clued up on the projector. Board members started arriving at 7:45. I knew them all by name, had served them coffee countless times while silently noting their strengths and weaknesses. Old friends of my father's, mostly more interested in maintaining the status quo than pushing for innovation. Marcus showed up at 7:55, barely glancing at the materials I prepared. My father walked in at 8 sharp, nodding approvingly at the setup but not at me. I took my usual place in the corner, laptop ready to take notes. The perfect executive assistant, invisible but essential. The meeting proceeded as usual. Updates were given, decisions were made, most of them short-sighted. Marcus fumbled through his presentation, but the board members smiled indulgently. He was John Harrison's son, after all. They'd known him since he was in diapers. Then came the market analysis portion. I watched as they discussed emerging trends, completely missing the signals that anyone paying attention could see. Their confidence in their outdated perspectives would have been amusing if it wasn't so frustrating. The traditional enterprise model is still the way to go, my father declared. All this talk about cloud-native solutions and remote work platforms, it's just a fad. Our clients want stability, not trendy new features. I bit my tongue, thinking about the prototype on my laptop that proved exactly the opposite. About the conversations I'd had with frustrated clients who were actively looking for alternatives to Harrison Technologies' outdated offerings. After the meeting, as I was cleaning up, I overheard my father talking to Marcus in the hallway. Good job in there, son. In a few years, this will all be yours to run. Thanks, Dad. I'm learning from the best. I gathered the coffee cups perhaps a bit more forcefully than necessary, thinking about the launch plan sitting in my private email. One more month. Just one more month of playing the dutiful daughter and everything would change. That evening, as I was finishing up some actual office manager work, my father called me into his office. Sophia, he said, not looking up from his computer, we need you to stay late tomorrow. Marcus has a dinner date, so you'll need to finish the client presentations he was supposed to prepare. I thought about the launch meeting I had scheduled for tomorrow evening, a crucial discussion with our development team. Actually, Dad, I have plans. He cut me off with a wave of his hand. This is important, Sophia. I know you have your little social activities, but the business has to come first. I stood there for a moment, swallowing my anger. Of course, Dad. I'll reschedule. As I turned to leave, he finally looked up. You know, if you focused more on work and less on whatever it is you do in your free time, you might actually develop some real business skills. I paused at the door, thinking about the millions in funding sitting in an account he knew nothing about. About the team of brilliant developers who respected my leadership without questioning my gender. You're right, Dad, I said softly. I should focus more on business. He nodded approvingly, already dismissing me from his mind. If he'd been paying attention, he might have noticed the slight smile on my face as I walked out. But that was the beauty of being underestimated. No one ever looked too closely at what you were really doing. I texted the team to reschedule our meeting, then sat down at my desk to think. Maybe this was actually perfect timing. The client presentations Marcus was supposed to prepare would give me access to valuable data. Data that could help Phoenix Software target the right customers when we launched. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Chen, David's daughter and my closest friend since college. Dad told me about the prototype. When are you finally going to show these dinosaurs what you've built? I smiled, typing back, soon, very soon. The morning of Phoenix Software's launch, I arrived at Harrison Technologies earlier than usual. The sun hadn't even risen as I unlocked the office doors, my heels clicking against the marble floors of the empty lobby. Everything was ready. After months of preparation, countless late nights, and endless meetings disguised as book clubs and yoga classes, we were finally going live. In exactly 6 hours, Phoenix Software Solutions would announce its presence to the world. And my family had no idea what was coming. I settled at my desk, checking my phone one last time. Messages from our PR team, our developers, and David all confirmed everything was in place. The press release was ready, the platform was polished, and 5 major clients, including 2 that Harrison Technologies had been unsuccessfully courting for months, were prepared to announce their partnerships with Phoenix. Another early start, Marcus's voice made me jump. He was leaning against my doorframe, looking surprisingly alert for 7 a.m. Dad wants to see us both in his office. My stomach tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. Both of us? What about? He shrugged, but something in his eyes made me uneasy. Guess we'll find out. My father was waiting behind his massive desk, reading something on his computer screen with unusual intensity. He didn't look up as we entered. Sit down, he said, his voice clipped. We did. I noticed a folder on his desk, one that looked suspiciously familiar. Would either of you, he began slowly, like to explain this? He turned his monitor around, showing us what he'd been reading. My blood ran cold. It was an advance copy of the press release announcing Phoenix Software's launch. Somehow, it had leaked. Interesting reading, my father continued, his voice dangerously quiet, especially the part about the founder and CEO, Sophia Harrison, former head of strategy at Harrison Technologies. I sat up straighter. If he'd found out, there was no point in denying it. I was never head of strategy here, I said calmly. You made sure of that. Marcus was staring at me, his face a mixture of shock and something else, respect, maybe. Do you have any idea what you've done? My father demanded, his composure cracking. Starting a competing company? Poaching our potential clients? This is a betrayal of everything we've built. No, I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. This is me building something of my own because you never gave me the chance to help build this company. He slammed his hand on the desk. We gave you every opportunity. We promoted you. You demoted me to office manager because I dared to suggest changes that might have actually saved this company. I cut in. You pushed me aside because you couldn't handle the idea that your daughter might actually understand business better than your son. Marcus flinched at that, but didn't argue. He'd seen the numbers after all. He knew how badly things had been going under his leadership. And now what? My father demanded. You think you can just walk in here and announce you're our competitor? That you've been secretly working against us? I pulled out my own folder, my resignation letter, effective immediately. I think I just did. He opened the folder, his face reddening as he read. 5 million in series of funding. Major client partnerships. How long have you been planning this? Long enough to do it right, I replied. long enough to build something that actually addresses what modern businesses need, instead of clinging to outdated solutions and country club connections. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. The press release goes live in 4 hours. Phoenix Software will be announcing partnerships with Red Tech Industries and Global Dynamics, both companies you've been trying to land for years. My father's face went pale. Those were exactly the kind of high-profile clients Harrison Technologies desperately needed. "You can't do this," he said, but his voice had lost its authority. "We're family." "Family?" I laughed softly. "Is that what you call it when you dismiss every idea I've ever had? When you pass me over for promotions I've earned? When you force me to clean up Marcus's messes while telling me I'm not cut out for leadership?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Dad," he said quietly, "she's right. We've been treating her like an assistant when she's probably the most qualified person in this building." Our father turned on him. "Don't you start. This is a betrayal, plain and simple." "No," I said firmly. "This is business. Something you taught me, though probably not in the way you intended." I walked to the door, then turned back for one last look at the office where I'd spent so many years trying to prove myself. "By the way," I added, "you might want to check your client retention numbers. Phoenix isn't just launching with new partnerships, we're also offering solutions to all the customers you've been neglecting." I walked out of his office with my head high, ignoring his spluttered protests. As I passed my old desk, I saw Sarah waiting by the elevator, a broad smile on her face. "Ready to make history?" she asked, holding up a garment bag. Inside was the suit I'd carefully chosen for the launch press conference. "More than ready," I replied, taking the bag. It was time to show the world what I'd built. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. While Harrison Technologies erupted into chaos over the news, I was at Phoenix's newly unveiled headquarters, preparing to formally announce our arrival on the tech scene. Our office was everything Harrison Technologies wasn't: modern, innovative, designed for collaboration rather than hierarchy. The team I'd assembled over the past year moved through the space with excitement and purpose, each of them chosen not for their connections or family name, but for their talent and vision. As I stood at the podium for the press conference, cameras flashing and reporters waiting eagerly, I caught a glimpse of Marcus slipping into the back of the room. He gave me a slight nod, not exactly approval, but something close to acknowledgement. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice clear and confident. "Today, Phoenix Software Solutions is proud to announce a new era in enterprise software." The launch was an unprecedented success. By the end of the day, our stock had soared, client inquiries were pouring in, and tech blogs were buzzing about the innovative features our platform offered. But the real satisfaction came 3 months later, when Harrison Technologies' board of directors called an emergency meeting. Their stock had plummeted as clients jumped ship to Phoenix, and Marcus had finally admitted he wasn't qualified to lead the company. I wasn't surprised when my father's secretary called to schedule a meeting. He looked older when I walked into his office, the strain of the past few months evident in his face. "You've made your point," he said without preamble. "Now let's talk about an acquisition." I sat down, smoothing my skirt. "I'm listening." "Harrison Technologies has history, connections. Combined with your innovations, we could be stronger together." He pushed a proposal across the desk. "We're prepared to offer a very generous package." I picked up the document, pretending to consider it. "And who would run the merged company?" He hesitated. "Well, naturally, with my experience." "No," I cut him off gently. "That's not how this works. Phoenix is worth 3 times what Harrison Technologies is now. We have the superior technology, the growing client base, the momentum. If you want to talk merger, you need to understand I would be in charge." The look on his face was almost worth all the years of dismissal and disrespect. Almost. "You can't be serious," he started, but I held up a hand. "Actually, I am. But I don't think a merger is the right move." I stood up. "Phoenix is doing exactly what I built it to do: innovating, growing, succeeding on its own merits. Harrison Technologies needs to adapt or fade away. That's your choice to make." As I turned to leave, he called out, "Sophia, wait." I paused at the door. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "About you, about what you could do." "I know," I replied. "But I didn't build Phoenix to prove you wrong, Dad. I built it because it needed to exist and because I was exactly the right person to build it." The next year saw Phoenix Software grow beyond even my ambitious projections. We expanded internationally, acquired smaller innovative startups, and continued pushing the boundaries of what enterprise software could do. Harrison Technologies eventually did adapt, though not under my father's leadership. Marcus, to everyone's surprise, stepped down as VP and went back to school for a computer science degree. "I want to earn my place," he told me over coffee one day. "The way you did." My father retired, passing control to a new CEO who actually understood the modern tech landscape. They became one of Phoenix's integration partners, a small fish in our pond, but at least they were swimming in the right direction. Sarah became my COO, proving that another powerful woman in tech wasn't threatening. It was exactly what the industry needed. Together, we built a company culture that valued innovation, merit, and diversity of thought. One evening, as I stood in my office overlooking the city, David came to visit. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" he asked, gesturing at the bustling office floor below. I smiled, thinking about that quiet coffee shop where we planned it all. Actually, I did. That's the difference between me and my father. I could see the future clearly because I wasn't blinded by the past. "And now you are the future," he said proudly. I looked out at my team, at the empire we built from nothing but talent, determination, and the underestimation of others. "No," I corrected him, "we all are."